All right, it's a strange place for a miracle. Jesus' first recorded sign, the first public moment where he reveals his power, it isn't at a temple. It isn't in a battlefield. It's not at a storm or even a synagogue. It's at a wedding. And it's not about healing the sick. It's not about casting out demons or raising the dead. It's about wine. Why? What does it mean that the very first glimpse we get of Jesus in John's gospel is of someone who saves a wedding feast? Welcome to Bible Curio, where we believe God is in the details, and sometimes those details take us to unexpected places. I'm Tyler Jimerson, and today's episode is called The First Sign, because that's what John calls it. It's not a miracle, but a sign, which means there's something here pointing us to something much bigger. And to see it, we got to ask a few questions to begin with. Number one, why a wedding? Why does only John mention this story about Jesus? Why does Jesus use purification jars? Like, why is that a necessary detail in the story? And why does he seem almost reluctant to perform the miracle? And what does he mean whenever he refers to this hour that he's not ready for? Something deeper is happening here, and it's not just about the wedding that's occurring in Cana. So our story opens in Cana of Galilee, just 6 miles north of Nazareth, and it's a wedding. And this is all happening in the book of John, particularly in chapter 2. And weddings in the ancient world were like a big deal, sometimes lasting an entire week, right? And then comes the disaster. Mary, Jesus' mother, approaches Jesus and says, "They have no wine." Now, in our world, that might be inconvenient, but in their world, this had the potential of being a public disgrace. I mean, running out of wine at a wedding wasn't just embarrassing. It was considered a social failure because weddings in their world, more so than in our individualistic society, were communal events, and the groom was responsible for making sure everything was provided. That responsibility fell on him. And these weddings lasted a long time, so in many cases over a week. And so Mary turns to Jesus. She's thinking about the groom. If he failed, it could bring lasting shame. She goes to her son. She doesn't tell him what to do. She just simply states the problem. They have no wine. And Jesus' response, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." Which, okay, kind of a weird thing to say. First off, why does he call her woman? Like, that sounds kind of cold, but it's not. It's actually a formal, respectful address. It's something that we'll see him use again whenever he speaks tenderly about her at the cross, and particularly in John chapter 19 and verse 26, when he commits her to the care of John. Now, the real mystery in this phrase is the hour. What hour is he talking about? Throughout John's gospel, whenever Jesus talks about his hour, it always refers to one thing. I'm looking particularly in John 7 and verse 30, John 8 and verse 20, and John 13 and verse 1. Every time he's referring to his hour, he's talking about his death. So what's happening here? Jesus is at a wedding. He's surrounded by joy, celebration, dancing, laughter, but his mind is on something else. Because here's one way to look at it. Wine in Jewish tradition is more than just a drink. We see that it's a symbol of joy in the Psalms. We see that it's a symbol of blessing in the Proverbs. But we also see in Genesis 49, verse 11, for example, it's also a symbol of blood. Jesus knows what's coming. This wedding feast is just a glimpse of another wedding feast, one that he will bring about at great cost to himself. Because for Jesus, the real feast, the true outpouring of joy, will come through his own blood. And that's why his mind is heavy. That's why he hesitates. Because this moment in Cana is pointing forward to something much greater. The wedding in Cana, this wedding in Cana, is the start of something. That's what John is implying by calling this Jesus' first sign. This is the beginning of something. This is the proverbial first domino in a row of dominoes. And so Mary doesn't argue. She just turns to the servants and says, "Do whatever he tells you." And what does Jesus tell them to do? Well, he points to 6 massive stone jars. And the Bible tells us that these are the kind used for purification rituals. These weren't drinking jars. They were used for ceremonial washing, symbolizing the need for cleansing before coming before God, right? Purification. Jesus tells them to take them, fill them to the brim. And then somewhere between the filling and the drawing, something happens. The water transforms, not just into wine, but into the best wine, like 150 gallons of it. Why is this his first sign? A sign, if you remember, is a symbol filled with meaning. And in an earlier podcast, we talked about Annette Simmons' book, The Story Factor, and how she lays out that there are 6 helpful stories that everyone needs to know how to tell. And the first 2 stories are perhaps the most important. The first 2 stories that every human needs to know how to tell is, who am I and what am I about? And this is Jesus' first sign because it's in a sense answering those questions. Who is Jesus and what is he about? This is his first sign because this is what he came to do. He takes what is empty and he fills it. He takes what is ordinary and transforms it. He takes the shame of a failed feast and he turns it into overflowing joy. And he does it using the very symbols of the old order, the purification jars, the washing rituals, because he's bringing something new. The old was about water and cleansing. The new is about wine and rejoicing. The old required constant purification. The new will be finished in one cup and with one sacrifice. This isn't even the last wedding that we read about in John's writings, and which I think is actually a clue to what maybe this first wedding in John's writings is all about. Because if you fast forward to the last of John's writings, I'm thinking specifically of Revelation 19, you'll see another wedding feast, verses 7 and 9, the marriage supper of the Lamb, what all of the scriptures have been pointing towards, where it said, "Blessed are all of those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb." This first wedding in Cana, it's a preview. It's a glimpse of where the entire story that God has been writing is headed, where all of human history is headed. Jesus is the true bridegroom, the one who provides the best wine when all other joys run out. And his feast, it's still coming. I know this seems like a story about what went wrong at a wedding, some random wedding in Nazareth, but I want you to see this really as a picture, an analogy, an illustration of actually everything that is wrong with the world. At this wedding, we experience, in microcosm, scarcity, poverty, emptiness, depression, famine, barrenness, all the things that are wrong with God's creation are there at this wedding. So what does it tell us about Jesus that he stands up at this wedding to fix that? Edmund Clowney, who was a professor, put it this way, and I've always loved his saying on this story. He says, "Jesus sat amidst all the joy of the wedding feast, sipping the coming sorrow, so that today you and I who believe in him can sit amidst this world's sorrow, sipping the coming joy." Right? So what do we do with this story? Well, I think it means that we trust Jesus fills what is empty. That's the meaning of this first sign, that we recognize that transformation happens in the pouring, and that we remember that the best is yet to come. That's why all of history is pointing towards this wedding feast of the bridegroom, the wedding supper of the Lamb. A day is coming when the feast won't end, when the cup will never run dry, when the bridegroom will gather his people and we will raise a glass to eternity. That's the first sign. And that's where all of our stories is going. And how can this begin? Because it does. It begins now. How does it begin now? I think we couldn't do any better than Mary's advice in the story. When she tells the servants, do whatever he tells you. If you enjoyed this episode, why don't you check out the last one where we discussed Paul's use of midrash in the Bible. Thanks for listening to Bible Curio. See a friend, tell a friend, and join me next time as we uncover another hidden treasure in Scripture. Until then, stay curious and stay open to the possibilities.